Yeah, good morning. I'm gonna try this again. You're not gonna believe this, but I did this whole video yesterday. I was so worried about turning on the microphone, I forgot to mash the record button. So when I got in there I pulled the SD card off and put it in the computer. Well, I wasn't there. Oh well. I'd like to say live and learn, but it doesn't seem like I live. It don't seem like I learned too much. Anyway, here's what this video is about. I was thinking the other morning about answering comments. You know, I answer every comment I get. I acknowledge them anyway, at the very least. But I get a few questions now and then, and I answer them. And the only person that sees my answer, or persons, I guess, is the person that gets a notification I answered them. Are people who, go to the video and they look at it and then they look at comments. I don't think very many people, after they see the video, go back to check the comments later. I sure know I don't when I look at videos. So basically you never see my answer. And sometimes, my answer, a lot of people probably wondering the same thing. So I thought I would go back. I went back a couple, 3 months on my videos and picked out looks like I got about 17 deals here, and I thought I would talk about them in a little short video. My plan is to, every time I do a new video, I'm going to take any questions I had from the previous video, and put them into the new video, but I'm not going to put them at the beginning. I will put them, I will embed them somewhere, like when I change, a phase of my turning, like from doing the inside to the outside or vice versa. And I'll do it that way because I personally don't like videos that have a lot of talking on the front end. It's just like watching a movie. You watch a movie and it doesn't grab you in the first 5 minutes, you're usually out of there, at least I am. And I think the same thing happens with, our wood turning videos. My philosophy on videos, and it has been for some time now. It didn't start out that way. When I first started out, I sort of did what everybody was doing, thinking that was the thing to do. And maybe it was, but I pretty soon, I didn't get in trouble with copyright music, but I did get flagged, so I took all my music off and decided I just didn't want to screw with it no more. I couldn't find any free music I really liked, and the thing about it is, what I like and my taste in music is not your taste in music, and vice versa. So I decided I just won't put music in there anymore. I love music, don't get me wrong. I just don't think it does anything for the video because, I like the sounds of the natural sounds around me, even if it is a loud old fan or dog barking or telephone or, but I like the cutting sounds. I've been doing this long enough now where I can listen to cutting sounds and tell how well it's working. I mean, when my grandson's in here turning, I can be in the other room, and I can tell if something's not quite right. And I usually come in here and correct him on it, or at least tell him what's supposed to be done right. That doesn't mean he does it. So anyway, I've got these questions that were asked me over a period of time, and I thought I would sort of go through them. So let's just go ahead and get started. They're not in any particular order. They're just sort of like when I found them. And I thought I would, just do a brief discussion on how I answered them. I didn't write the exact questions down. I just made me some notes. And some of my notes, I can't even hardly understand what they mean now. Anyway, here's one here. A guy, his name was Gil, I guess. I wrote Gil down there. He says he uses Titebond rather than epoxy. And I think he's referring to like when, I do an epoxy bowl. My preferred method is to put a ring on the top and the bottom. And I always use like that 2-ton epoxy to put it on. Because when I flip it around and put a tenon on it, or put a tenon on it and flip it around, it's under a lot of pressure. And I feel better about it. He says he uses Titebond and it does well for him. Well, I don't know, Gil. Titebond is an air-dried product, and contrary to a lot of popular belief, it doesn't really dry in an hour or two. A lot of people, I've seen them on video put on this, well, it's been an hour and a half, I can do it now. Well, okay, but what I found is that, and I've done it before accidentally, is that if you, put two pieces of wood together and you wait an hour and you split them apart, the parameter of it is pretty well dried, but the center is still like wet. So, once it really dries good, like overnight, it might be okay for that. But on the other hand, Tight Bond is made on wood products together. And when you've got epoxy and then wood, I feel a lot more comfortable using epoxy. It's a lot stronger. Epoxy basically is about the best glue in the world. So that's why I use epoxy. Now here's one. Guy wanted to know, how come I only did scraping? I think he's referring to carbide tools, which basically they are scrapers. Because he said that, I got a wall full of other tools, gouges and stuff like that, why don't I use them? Well, if you watch my videos very close, you do see that every once in a while I do go use those kind of tools. My preference is carbide tools, and it's, I don't have to sharpen them very often. I guess if you got real high quality turning tools and gouges and skews, the edge might last a lot longer, but I turn a lot of dry wood, and dry wood really dulls those things in a hurry. I don't like sharpening. I got all the jigs and all that kind of stuff. But, you only do two things when you turn. You're either scraping or you're cutting, and that's it. And if you can look at some of my videos, I do a lot of cutting with carbide tools, by turning them up on their side and doing a shear cut. And it's the same thing you would do with a skew, except it's more difficult than a skew. I can use a skew. I've used them quite often. But on a skew, you've got an area, say you're using an inch wide skew, you've got an area like that to, turn it up on its side and do its slicing or cutting. But on a carbide, I use the radius, square cutter with a radius. It's only about like that, so you've only got a little area for your cutting. So you have to really watch your corners real good, because you can get a catch real easy. But I pretty much perfected it. That works real good. So that's the reasons. Not that I can't use them. I can use every one of them. Actually, I'm quite proficient at them, except I'm not real proficient with a skew, but I could be if I wanted to. Anyway, moving on. This guy wanted to know, I don't know if some of y'all remember, but I did a little short 410 shotgun for a friend of mine, put a hand grip on it and a forearm, and I made a statement that can't remember exactly, you didn't need to stop because they kicked too hard, and he made some sort of smart ass comment, I thought. He said, kicks too hard? In what universe? Well, my goodness, this guy's thinking about an old heavy 410 with a short 410 shell in it. They're almost nothing. But if you take a 410 shell, a 3-inch 410 shell, and you put it in a gun that weighs no more than about 3 pounds, and you put that stock up to your shoulder, especially the stock that came on that snake charmer, it's only about yay wide, and you put it in the crevice of your shoulder there and you fire it, I can absolutely guarantee you won't do it again. That particular shell probably has as much powder as a 30-06 cartridge. So, he just really didn't know what he was talking about. So, moving along. Now, this guy, I like this comment. He asked why I didn't use cold jaws for holding. If you remember, the last video, or maybe the one before I did a bowl, and I did the lip, and I had a hard time holding it in place. It wanted to slide. And he says, why didn't you use your cold jaws to hold it in place on the tailstock? And I have the adapter for that too. And, I just said, my answer to him was, well, I didn't think of it. They're sitting over there, and you know what us wood turners do? We get used to 4 or 5 tools, and that's sort of our universe of weapons to go to. And sometimes we don't think of other things. But, I thanked him, and I'll try to remember to do that from now on, because that's a dang good idea. Now, here's a subject that, I've had a lot of comments over the time on it, and, I think it's a matter of philosophy. But this, his statement was sort of pointed to, he says, that glove catches and you'll have punky fingers. You remember the videos I did on punky wood? I think that's what he was talking about. Well, he's right. But let me tell you about wearing gloves. I wear them because things hurt. When they hit my hands, they hurt. You know, I'm getting on up in the years, and my skin's not as, doesn't bounce back like it used to. And, you know, they just hurt, so I wear gloves now. Then as far as the gloves catching, I don't think I'll ever have that problem. I mean, I could be wrong, but my philosophy is very simple. You never touch anything that's spinning whatsoever. Not even when it's going slow. You keep your hands off it. In fact, when I was teaching my grandsons, which I'm still working on, I took one of my wrists and I painted it red right here. And the whole point I was trying to make to them is that that's a red line. In other words, your fingers never cross that red line while the lathe is spinning. The only time that you touch anything that's spinning is when you're sanding, and then the gloves come off. So, you know, if you never touch it while it's spinning, you can't get a catch on your gloves. I mean, it's just that simple. You know, I know accidents happen, and I know we get complacent, and, you know, I'm hoping that doesn't happen to me, and it could, you know. And I'm thinking everybody that ever gets hurt on this because they're sitting there, you know, feeling it with their hands and putting their hands inside and stuff like that while it's spinning. You know, it's sort of like their own fault. So anyway, moving on. Had a guy said, you got such a big shop, how do you clean it? And I said, well, I use a broom and a shop vac. Yeah, next. Now this guy talked about, why don't I use a vacuum chamber more? And I have a vacuum chamber, and when I was doing pins, you know, and doing wood, I would use it for that, and it, you know, it worked good for that. But first place, it's not big enough to do some of the things I do. He was basically, I think he was talking about the deer antlers, you know, why I didn't use those. And, you know, that would work, but I just don't do it that way. A vacuum chamber, what it does is, you know, when you put the vacuum on it, it sucks the air out of whatever you're vacuuming. And you use something called cactus juice in there. It's basically an epoxy or, you know, some type of resin. And it fills that void. That's what happens, you know. When the air evacuates, the epoxy runs into those crevices or holes or whatever. And then you have to take it out and you have to put it in an oven for a couple hours and crap like that. Excuse me. And, you know, it's a pain in the butt. And cactus juice is, it's quite expensive, like $100 for a gallon. But anyway, I prefer a pressure pot. The difference in a pressure pot and a vacuum chamber is a pressure pot actually compresses the air bubbles into, you know, almost a microscopic bubble. You can't see it, it's still there, but what it's done, the pressure has compressed it, and it works much better for my uses, and I get good results. So, you know, that's in the pudding right there. And I had a guy ask me, you know, where I get my buffing wheels. Well, you know, they came with the buffing system, and, you know, you can buy them individually on Amazon and so forth. This guy says he tried my sealer and buffing it, but he got uneven and dull spots. Well, there's two things can happen there, my friend. Number one, you didn't have enough sealer on it. You didn't build up a base. And number two, you overbuffed it. You know, you basically went below the sealer. You know, you can actually buff the sealer too fast. You can, you know, your RPM on your buffer too fast, and it'll, I don't know if it melts it, but it just sort of, you know, takes it away. Even when the sealer has penetrated the wood, you know, you still need that sort of a top coat. And that's really what you're buffing. So, you know, that's the reason that happens. All right. Here's the next one. It says, people have problems hearing me. Well, I know that, and when I first started, I guess I wasn't thinking, but just like this camera right now, I would put it way over there another 10 foot by the saw, and I would just use my zoom to zoom in. I could get better angles that way, but I wasn't thinking that I also was putting a microphone over there. So, you know, I've corrected that. I try to keep my camera pretty close to me now. I did go ahead and get, you know, the setup for, you know, a lapel deal, and I've used it a couple of times. Problem there is you got two more switches I've got to remember to turn on. Hell, I have a hard enough time remembering this one. So I don't use it very often. I just try to remember to get my camera a little closer and I try to speak a little louder, I don't basically have a very loud voice, so sometimes I just forget and get a little low. Sort of like I talk to my wife, you know. So here's, okay, this guy, update on the beaver. All right, well, that ain't going so good, guys. Seems like I just can't seem to find anybody that wants to make them for me or wants to make them for me at something I consider reasonable. The Chinese won't touch it for less than $25,000 order. And, well, that's a whole lot of beavers. I don't think we even got that many wood turns. I certainly would never sell them, so. Plus, I sure don't want to put $25,000 in there with a chance of me not getting it back. And I got a quote from a machine shop out of Little Rock. Yeah, the stainless steel ones, they want like almost 38 bucks a piece to make them, and the steel ones $34 a piece. Now, I didn't think that was reasonable, so I passed on that one. But right now, there's a site called mfg.com that you put your drawings on, and people, you know, they give you quotes. He talked about, you know, the way I set up things between centers with what I do, in case, you know, somebody doesn't know, is I take the drive in and I drill about a quarter to a half-inch deep, 1-inch hole with a Forster bit that my drive center actually fits into there. It's captured, and then I take the livestock end and I use a step drill, and I drill sort of a cone-like hole in it, and that fits my live center, which basically means that whatever's between centers is really captured, and it's virtually impossible for it to come out unless you have some wood just give away. Like, you know, I did have that happen one time recently, but you know, it didn't come out. It just, that one end messed up, and that's because the wood was so punky, and I was cutting that end down to a nub, like, you know, cutting a tenon off. So it came out then, but that's the only time, and then the bowl didn't leave the lathe, so that's good. So that's the way I do that. All right, next one is comment, a long technical comments. Well, okay. To me, it's sort of like, if I ask somebody what time it is, they tell me how to build a watch. So I've had a couple of them, you know, about, you know, half a page long of telling me all about the properties of different metals or whatever, or, you know, resins and stuff like that. I don't know if they're trying to educate me or just impress me with their knowledge. But, you know, if you're so inclined to do something like that, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't read it. I look at it and the damn thing's a paragraph or two long. I sort of scan it and I see what it's about. You know, this guy was telling me, you know, the different properties that, you know, if I had more carbon here makes it harder on a scale, something like this, and less carbon makes it softer on another scale. I don't know. So, you know, I really don't care. This guy was also talking about not using, he said WD-40 is no good for sharpening carbides. Well, so what? It works. You know, I put WD-40 on a diamond card, and you rub your carbide around, you see black stuff roll off, so that tells me it's cutting. That's all that matters. All right, moving on. Where are we? Measuring and marking. I want to know how come I didn't measure and mark more things. Well, it's just not the way I do things. I like to say I'm a swag person. I do everything with a swag. That stands for scientific wild ass guess. Sometimes I mark it, sometimes I don't. I just sort of, you know, play it by ear, because I don't think I've ever turned anything that ended up like I thought it would. You know, there's always something different that happens. So I generally say, well, I think I'll put a valley here, or I think I'll put a bead here. You know, I don't necessarily plan it. Maybe I should, but I don't. So, you know, that's why I don't show my measuring and marking, because I don't do no measuring and marking. All right, here's one on dislikes. The guy was commenting on dislikes, and, you know, well, when I first started turning dislikes, they sort of irritated me a little bit, but I got where I don't pay any attention to them. I think the last video I did, I think I got 5 or 6 dislikes. Well, I guess they have the reasons. You know, one of them is, you know, sometimes people are just a-holes. Well, that's okay. Then something I said or something I did, or maybe they like music in them. I don't know. And then sometimes it's, you know, it can be my fault. I think I've corrected all that. Or anybody that uploads a video, for you guys that don't upload one, and you've probably never seen it, part of your criteria you put down, and they call it tags. And what this is you put in search criteria. For instance, on my videos, I think I've got things like wood turning, woodcraft, you know, grizzly lace, and wood chisels, and carbides, you know, just things that if a guy goes on there and he types in carbide sharpening, well, then he'll get some of my videos. Now, if I was to put something in there like how to boil eggs, and somebody goes and they type how to boil eggs and they get my video on, you know, how to sharpen carbides, well, that might irritate them. So you got to be careful with your tags, and they have to be totally relevant to what you're doing. And I think, you know, sometimes that's it. So moving on there, you know, you just ignore them and move. So smells and dust. Now, somebody says, don't the smells and dust bother you? Well, yeah, a little bit. But you know, it's sort of like somebody working at a butcher shop. And after a while, you say, what smell? You know? So, and dust, I try to have my dust collector on the best I can in the overhead, you know, overall room. And this is such a big room, I doubt it does any good. And sometimes I wear a respirator, you know, quite honestly, I don't do enough of any of it. And I should, but I don't. And here's the last one. I've had several guys telling me on how to keep, you know, the ends open on the CA bottles. And guys, and none of them work, okay? None of them work. You know, you can put a nail in the end of it, you can put a pin in the end of it, but then that damn pin or nail gets glued in. You got to use pliers to get it out, and sometimes it takes part of the tip. You know, I've used mineral oil. I got a rag up there that I wipe it down with mineral oil every time, put the cap on, but sooner or later it sticks. You know, I've yet to find anything that really works. So that's all I got, guys. I'm done. You can stick a fork in me this time. Look forward to seeing you next time. I've got an idea in my head. I'll start the next video. I'll give you a hint. I'm going to build a table. I've been looking at how to do tabletops and stuff like that using epoxy, you know, with different things in them. And I think maybe I'll try that, and I'll build a pedestal for it and a base, and make me a little, you know, maybe about a three foot high table, maybe about 18, 20 inches in diameter, and make me a pretty top on it. I think that might be very interesting. I'm update on myself. I had a lot of problems with my left hip here, so I just got off it a while. It's a lot better. I have inflamed bursa, if anybody wants to know what that means. They can look it up, I guess. But it's a lot better. I went and had some cortisone shots and stuff, and I'm better. I put anti-fatigue matting down. Got me a brand new pair of Skechers that are really soft, so I'm hoping to get back after it. I am going to sort of not do as much as long. You know, sometimes before I'd be out here on the concrete for 3-4 hours at a time, you know, turning something. You know, when you make a video, now you see about 30 minutes of it, but sometimes it takes, you know, 4 or 5 hours to do that, and you've got to try to edit it down to like 30 minutes, so it can be difficult to do. And you have to leave a lot of things out. You have to speed some things up. I mean, you just can't show everything. It's impossible. So you try to show the more interesting things, and a lot of times, you know, I say or do something that I wish I shown, but just don't have the time, because statistically, at least the statistics on my stuff is that about a 9 or 10 minute attention span's all you have. So if you don't grab those people in those first few minutes, they're gone. So anyway, guys, hey, subscribe. Tell your friends. I'm just an old fart with a good hobby. So call your mama. Keep working. Bye-bye.